Does the thought of budgeting ever leave you feeling anxious or stressed? Does the very word budgeting make your blood pressure start to increase? You feel like your finances control you instead of the other way around? If so, you are in the right place, and it's time for a mindset shift. For those of you who don't know me, welcome. I am Leah Hadley. I am the founder of Great Lakes Investment Management and Great Lakes Divorce Financial Solutions. And I help women who have spent a lifetime taking care of everybody else to finally take control of their finances. I do that through money mentorship and strategic investment management so that you can really feel like you have a partner in managing your money well. But today we're going to talk very specifically about how to master the mindset shift from budgeting stress to financial empowerment. And I want you to think about something for a minute. I was thinking about this as I was preparing what I wanted to talk about. Do you use a calendar? I can tell you that I could not function without my calendar. I would be double booked probably most days of the week if I didn't have a calendar. If you think about it, a calendar is like your guide to all of the things that you have planned, right? Similarly, a budget is a plan for your money. So that way you don't double up in terms of spending, right? You don't have a certain amount of money allocated to, let's say, fixing up your bathroom and use the same money to fix up your car, right? That you have a plan for where your money is going to go. Now, we know that budgeting can be stressful for a lot of people, and it can be particularly stressful when people are going through a life change. Their income is changing, their expenses are changing. I remember very clearly when my ex-husband and I adopted our 3 children out of foster care, and the 3 of them came together as a sibling group. So we went from no children in the home to 3 overnight. It completely overwhelmed my budgeting system because they needed everything. When they first came to us, they each had a garbage bag of some items. Most of them were clothing that didn't fit anymore, were out of season. And so they really needed everything. It felt really overwhelming to go from just kind of managing between the 2 of us to now providing for these 3 additional people, right? So any life change that you go through, it can be a positive life change, like a growing family, buying your first home, right? These are wonderful changes, but they absolutely impact cash flow. And it can be really helpful to take a step back and think about, what's my new financial situation look like, right? So if you are finding that you are in the middle of a life transition, or you've recently experienced a life transition, and you haven't revisited your spending plan, which is how I like to think about a budget, then it may be time to do it. And it's really, really important. And it can give you a tremendous amount of peace of mind. And a lot of times people, when they're going through a big life change, such as a divorce or loss of a loved one, can feel very overwhelmed in dealing with basic cash flow issues. And that spending plan, that budget, is really your guidebook to, when's money coming in? When do I know money is going out, and having a plan for it, right? I also want you to really think about budgeting not in terms of restriction. And that's really important. And I think that's really where budgeting gets a bad rap, right? It's like going on a really strict diet and you can't eat the things you enjoy, right? A lot of times when people think about budgeting, they think about it in terms of limiting spending. And really, that's not what it's about. It might be necessary in order for you to reach your goals, but that's because those are your goals and that's what matters to you. And so in order to prioritize those goals, you may find that you do need to limit spending. But really, what budgeting is about is understanding when and how much income you're getting, knowing what expenses you've already committed to, what expenses come up every single month, what expenses come up once a quarter, once a year, right? And where do you have some flexibility to spend on discretionary things, right? But also keep in mind that a budget allows you to come up with how much you want to put away for the future also, so that you're not just focused on what you have going on today, but really forward planning in terms of things that are important to you, right? So whether that is retirement planning, or it's planning for your kids to go off to college, or it's planning about how you want to leave a legacy that has a positive impact on your family or your community. All of these things are bigger goals that you want to contemplate as part of your budgeting process, right? Similarly, a lot of people are investing in the future. Some people are still paying for the past, right? So if you've accumulated debt over the years, having that debt repayment plan as part of your overall budget is really important. So that way you can eliminate it and get to a situation where you're really just looking at what are my current and future expenses and how do I want to handle those things. The other thing that I say from people who are going through a big life change, like a divorce, right, is that a lot of times people have a settlement that they walk away with that they are terrified to actually spend any amount of because they're so worried about running out of money. And I recently shared a blog on the Watch Her Thrive blog. So if you want to check that out, I share a story of one of our clients. Her name is Emily. And Emily has a divorce settlement that she is going to be living off of. And she was so afraid to spend any money at all when we first started working together. She just wanted to invest it and really not give herself much of anything to live off of. And when we talked about money, I could see the scarcity mindset that was really all encompassing for her at that point. And so we started to really break down what was her monthly income, what were the expenses, what did she want to enjoy in her life. And what she found was that she was actually very capable of both putting money away for the future, but also allowing herself to spend and enjoy a little bit now as well. And so she didn't have to be afraid, but we needed to go through that process of looking at where the income was coming from, looking at her current asset situation in order for her to really have that confidence in black and white that, hey, I have more financial freedom than I realized, right? So let's talk a little bit about some very practical strategies that you can implement. And one of the most effective things that I have found when it comes to creating a budget is to really personalize it for what is important to you. Now, there are lots of rules of thumb out there of, you should spend this percentage on your housing costs or this percentage on needs or wants or this percentage on future savings and investments. The fact of the matter is those rules of thumb don't work for everybody for a variety of different reasons. The more personalized you can make your budget really work for you and really be in alignment with your personal priorities and goals, the easier it is to stick with it. So before you even get into the numbers, I recommend taking a step back and thinking about what is most important to me. And I used the example of a calendar earlier. If I look at my calendar, I can see my big priorities in my life are my family and my business, right? The biggest things that take up the most time on my calendar are things related to stuff I have going on with either my mom or my kids or my husband, or my business and my clients and all of that, right? And it's clear as day when I look at my calendar what my priorities are. I'm curious, if you look at your budget, is it as clear for you on your budget what is important to you, right? If you think about where do you cut back if you need to cut back, do you know where you would do that? Because it's just not that important to you, right? And I'll use an example because I think a lot of times people give themselves a really hard time with this particular spending pattern. So a lot of times people eat dinner out a lot or order carry out or, don't cook essentially, right? And spend a lot of extra money on dining out experiences or ordering in and things like that, more than what they might prioritize. However, if you take a step back and you think about your priorities, and maybe something that is important to you is, whoever you're dining out with, spending time with that person or those people, that's a priority. If you take that away, you're not adding it in somewhere else, then maybe your budget is no longer aligning with your priorities. So before you just start cutting things out, take a look at, hey, what is most important to me? What matters most? Where do I want to be investing? I personally value education. I do a lot of continuing education and professional development. And so I invest a lot of money in training and education so that I can stay on top of current trends and I can support my clients well, right? So maybe you find for yourself there's an area you want to invest in order to improve your skill set, right? So there are lots of different ways to look at budgeting and to look at it as just that plan for what you're going to do with your money. But before, again, you even get into that, I would encourage you to take a step back and really think about what matters to you, what's most important to you, and allow that to really guide your decisions on what to include, what to change, things like that when it comes to your overall budgeting plan. Once you're clear on what's most important to you, then you want to start getting into the numbers. Where's income coming from? Now, here's the thing. A lot of times when people are looking at budgeting, they're looking at reducing expenses. But I can't tell you how many times when I've gone through people's cash flow, we've actually found, hey, let's look at how we're going to increase your income, not reduce your expenses. Maybe it's a combination, But a lot of times we're looking at, does it make sense to invest in a career coach? Have you asked for a raise lately? Does it make sense to start some kind of a side business or some other kind of source of income, right? Don't just assume that because we're talking about budgeting, we're talking about reducing. Sometimes we're actually talking about how do we get you more money, right? And looking at it from that income perspective. But certainly you want to be familiar with your expenses, what money you already have committed to going out. So that way you know that you can plan for that. But you also want to plan for the things that come up unexpectedly. We've done some live streams and done some trainings on risk management recently. And this is an area where the unexpected happens. We do know that we can expect the unexpected to happen, right? And so making sure that we have funds set aside to deal with those things so it's not coming out of our normal cash flow is really important. And so that's where like an emergency savings account comes in, our cash reserve comes in. And that is a great way to protect yourself from that risk of some of these big unexpected expenses that you maybe hadn't planned for in the past. And so looking at that as part of your saving for the future, in addition to what you're spending on today, is really, really important. But you also really want to have clear financial goals for yourself that are ultimately guiding the process, right? So I mentioned the emergency savings. You do want to know how much emergency savings do you need in order to manage that risk. So that way you can set some parameters around, I'm going to save, X dollars a paycheck or X dollars a month in order to hit that goal, right? If I know that I'm planning for retirement and I want to retire when I'm 65 years old, I need to be investing this much each paycheck and it needs to grow at this kind of a rate over time. Things like that are really important to making sure, again, that plan is in alignment with both your short and long-term goals.